It was the first time Greg had said it out loud in front of a full conference room. The entire team sat in uncomfortable silence while he leaned back, casually chewing his gum like it owed him rent. He made it clear that my top-tier education meant nothing to him anymore, claiming his son was taking over next quarter because they needed someone who understood today's systems instead of the outdated methods I used. Finance, HR, marketing, and even 2 guys from maintenance heard the whole thing. Nobody laughed, but nobody defended me either. The only sound in the room was the low hum of fluorescent lights and the dull tap of Greg's silver pen bouncing off the table like a cheap metronome counting down my final days at the company. I just sat there perfectly still, folding my hands neatly in my lap and refusing to show any emotion. Underneath the conference table, I reached for my bag and clicked record on a hidden device attached to my keychain. Company policy said nothing about personal keychains, and as Greg launched into another ridiculous rant about ignoring standard procedures, I calmly made a little mark in my notepad. Over the past few months, the disrespect had grown from subtle sarcastic jokes about my age to deliberate disrespect in front of the entire staff. It went beyond simple words when the quiet cuts began. My access to critical platforms was slowly restricted, my name was mysteriously left off calendar invites, and my department was suddenly flagged for a fake budget audit. Then came the reorganization proposal, a corporate maneuver Greg called cross-functional streamlining. He moved me to a completely meaningless position 5 steps removed from anything that actually mattered, though I took the title change without complaining. When someone asked what my new role actually meant, Greg simply shrugged and told them I was just the janitor for the old systems. I chose not to fight it back then because I understood how real digital infrastructure worked. Systems do not collapse all at once. They rot slowly from the inside until the basement floods and the power cuts out completely. For 9 years, I was the only person keeping the company digital spine together without ever demanding credit or making a scene. Now I had to watch Greg swing his new authority around like a sledgehammer while boasting to his son, Brett. Brett had never written a single line of code in his life, yet he had the audacity to claim I was just afraid of innovation. They mistook my silence for weakness, unaware that I was quietly preparing behind the scenes by saving backed-up files, documenting every policy change, and setting up an automated system that would trigger under very specific conditions. The final confrontation happened on a rainy Thursday morning after I arrived at the office early. By 8 o'clock, I was called into a meeting room where Greg stood alongside an uncomfortable HR representative. He casually informed me that the company was going in a different direction and that his son would be taking over my position effective immediately, waiving my 2-week transition period as if he were doing me a favor. I remained completely calm, packed my belongings without saying a word, and handed my security badge directly to HR. As I walked out to my car, I sat in silence for 3 minutes until a soft notification pinged on my phone. An automated compliance process I built months ago was officially activated, starting a 13-day countdown before locking down critical company data and routing a full accountability report directly to the board of directors. Over the next few days, I completely detached myself from the company, ignoring messages from panicked former co-workers while enjoying my time at home. Meanwhile, Brett moved into my old office and immediately began dismantling essential operational checks. He cancelled vendor reviews, ignored compliance warnings, and threw away critical system documentation because he thought my procedures were overly complicated and unnecessary for his vision. Within a week, the consequences of their arrogance began to unfold rapidly. Access permissions broke down, system errors duplicated support tickets, and key software integrations failed across multiple departments. Brett blamed the legacy infrastructure for the chaos, completely unaware that his refusal to follow established protocols was destroying the operational network from the inside out while the compliance timer continued to tick. An auditor in the compliance department eventually noticed the missing documentation and flagged the issue to Greg, but Brett brushed it off with a short, dismissive email claiming they were running a modern system now. He did not realize that by removing my name from the transition phase without proper verification, he had officially triggered a clause that transferred all legal and financial liability directly onto the leadership team. By the time the board of directors scheduled an unexpected audit with the chairman attending in person, Greg was convinced it was his moment to shine. He spent days preparing flashy presentations with buzzwords, entirely blind to the fact that the actual operational system was crumbling behind the scenes. He even removed technical compliance slides from the presentation deck because he thought charts made people nervous. On the day before the major presentation, key staff members finally realized that the company was heading straight into a massive regulatory disaster. My former colleagues watched in disbelief as Greg and Brett celebrated their upcoming meeting, completely oblivious to the legal trap they had walked into. I received a quiet text asking if I was going to step in, but I simply told them to observe. When the chairman arrived for the meeting, the flashy presentation quickly fell apart under basic questioning about system security and compliance protocols. Unable to answer basic technical questions, Brett looked to his father, who could only offer vague promises about future growth. That was when the chairman pulled out the automated report my system had sent to his inbox, detailing every single policy violation, bypass safety check, and unauthorized access override. The fallout was immediate and devastating for Greg and his family. The board launched an emergency investigation, immediately stripping Greg of his executive authority and firing Brett on the spot for gross negligence. Faced with massive compliance penalties and ruined reputations, both of them were quietly escorted from the building while the company scrambled to hire external consultants to clean up the mess they had created. I watched everything unfold from a distance, enjoying the peace and quiet of my new routine. They believed they could push me out and replace years of careful work with arrogant shortcuts, but they failed to realize that a system always demands accountability. In the end, they destroyed their own careers simply because they never bothered to read the rules of the game they were playing.